Hey friends, welcome to the Break On Through video series. Today I am welcoming a very special guest. This is a very dear friend of mine who I've known since elementary school. The beautiful, incredibly talented, and amazing Marla Richardson. So today, Marla and I are going to be discussing pursuing our creative visions and passions and involvement in the arts. And the thing I love so much about Marla is she's, ever since growing up, she's been a dancer. She and I were both dancers together. And we've always been silly, playful, but Marla's taken that spirit with her into adulthood and pursued so many incredible um, creative visions and an amazing professional career, from being a professional dancer to creating her own dance production to a music career, as well as creating her own elixir or opening her own elixir bar called Soltara. It's in Reno, Nevada. So any of the listeners in the Reno area or anyone visiting, you have to check it out. It is amazing. So without further ado, welcome, Marla.
Leela, thank you so much for having me as your first guest. It's such a pleasure to get to talk with you today.
Yeah. So I was thinking just about our friendship earlier today, and um, I'm sure you saw this coming. We kind of have to go down memory lane a little bit
Thank you. We have
because
so
I
much
think,
history.
oh, I know, because it really ties into kind of what we were talking about today. Like the funniest one I thought of was when we dressed up in those tribal costumes of yours, and we went down to the end of my street and we're just like dancing. And there's like Lakeside, that busy street, with a lot of cars, like a lot of traffic. And we were just like dancing on it. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, vividly.
I mean, I look
Much
back on
fun.
it, right? I mean, it was so much fun. I look back on now, like, oh my gosh, like how embarrassing. Like all these cars are like driving by slowly, like kept like, I think like people were making multiple passes, and but we just didn't care. Like
Mm-mm.
we're just having fun and like not even like thinking that about how people were like laughing at us. Um, and that's something that I know I've kind of lost over time, like in my adulthood, that kind of spirit of like, I'm just gonna have fun, be playful, not care what other people think. But I just love how you've really just pursued every passion of yours with, I mean, you've created like so many cool things. Like, I mean, just in, I mean, we're in our 30s now, so not that much time. And I feel like you didn't let anything stand in your way. And I don't even know your full, you know, story from like high school or college to now. So I'm just curious to get pretty much just like a rundown of your trajectory, and your creative and professional pursuits, because you've meshed them together so well.
Thank you so much, Leela. I remember just loving playing dress up as a child and just being in that state of creative flow and getting into costume and being different characters and having fun. And that was very much a part of my childhood that I, in some ways, still do today. And I really have tried to let that trickle into my life because I think becoming an adult can get very serious and we have to start focusing on, careers and making money and finding a balance, work-life balance. And we kind of lose touch with that inner child and that creativity and joy that just naturally and spontaneously came from us as children. And I think growing up in a home that really supported the performing arts helped a lot. My parents definitely put me in many different creative classes like art and singing and dance and music. We were a part of many choirs. I did a lot of musicals growing up. I did the dance team. And of course, dance was my first love and, and very much is still a part of my life in a major way. But ancestrally, I come from, um, grandparents that were singers or musicians and great grandparents that were singers or musicians. And even my dad, sang and played guitar. And so that was very helpful and supportive to me already wanting to pursue more of a creative direction. I think just having that family base of support. And then as I've gotten older, I've found circles of friends and groups that I resonate with that also are very supportive of the arts. And I think that that really helps you stay in it because it can get difficult if you're surrounded by um, people that are not supporting that direction. So that's been a huge foundation, I think, for me at least.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I didn't actually think about that. Yeah, being surrounded by those people, it's a lot more, you have that support and you have other people in it with you. You see what they're going through. You're going through the same things together. It's not like you're alone kind of trying to like swim upstream because it's not an easy career path. How did you deal with that? The I don't know, the challenges of like, we're all kind of pushed to kind of go into that 9 to 5
Totally.
world and, financial stability. And I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know if you always felt like this is going to work out, this is going to work out for me. So I'm going to go for it. Or if you had those points of, okay, do I really go in this direction? Or, do I take, potentially a more stable route on the
Absolutely. Those are all questions that have come up along the way for sure. I think that I leaned more towards the independent route coming out of high school, and I, wanted to get my own place and get a job and all of that. And so I did take a first job as a receptionist at a salon when I was barely 18 years old. And I tried that out for maybe 6 to 7 months. And I quickly realized that that kind of a 9 to 5 thing was just not for me. And I did have an extensive background in dance at that time. And, there's a window of time that you really can pursue dance in a serious way. I just decided to kind of go for it, and I was going to go for it as long as I could, and I was just going to see how it worked out. So, I quit this reception position and I just started getting as many jobs dance related that I possibly could. And it required a lot of flexibility and adaptability in a small town to be able to make a living and financially make that work. And I just basically took every opportunity that would come along. So a lot of that was like teaching dance. And that's been a lot of my background for the last 20 years, like either coaching dance teams, choreographing for competition, or actually instructing in a studio for like jazz, tap, ballet, and hip hop to kids, teens, adults. That made up like the bulk of kind of my bread and butter income for a long time, just sort of knowing that I was going to get a steady paycheck through that. And then with that base, I just started like exploring other levels of performing. So I started auditioning for production shows in the casinos and I would get some contracts, some of them short, like a week, some of them would last like 3 to 4 months. And I would just continue to audition and take jobs in that realm. Um, when I was really trying to like financially make as much money as possible dancing, I was also taking like late night gigs in late night entertainment that would go sometimes till like 2 in the morning. And it was kind of exhausting. There was a stretch there where I was teaching during the day, going to do a show at the casino, and then working afterwards, for many years. And I sort of burnt myself out, but I was also proud of myself at the same time that I could make that work with just dance jobs alone in Reno. So that was kind of exciting and also motivating. And I just kind of continued. to the best of my ability. And physically, I just started feeling, I was getting little knee injuries and things like that, or feeling physically tired from having to use my body so much. Um, and that's, I think, when I hit like my late 20s is when I started considering the longevity of that lifestyle, and maybe um, creating alternative approaches or getting more creative on how I could still perform, still include the arts in my day to day, but also save my body and, make sure I wasn't burning myself out.
Actually, that's so interesting. I mean, our paths just from dance were so different. And I mean, I loved it so much too and still do. But I think I struggled a lot with I guess it's the perfectionist in me, never feeling like enough. I felt like if I wasn't the best, I had a hard time doing it. And I love that you just kept like persevering with it and you're like, I'm going to keep auditioning. I love dancing. I love doing this. I'm going to just keep putting myself out there. Um, because I mean, I'm sure at times you got rejected at auditions. I think
Yeah,
this is part of the key to your success in your creative endeavors. You seem, yeah, just to speak on that. I'm just curious. You probably handle rejection a lot better than I do.
I can totally relate to the perfectionist thing. I think a lot of dancers that have really stuck with it, or did it for a long time, you have to be very disciplined. And there is a bit of that perfectionist mentality that comes with it, especially the more technical you get into like the ballet world and all of that. But I think just staying optimistic and trying things that I normally wouldn't. Like if somebody asked me like, "Oh, I need you to teach country line dancing." I'm like, "Okay, that's not really my thing, but I guess I'm gonna try this out for a little bit." Or maybe I'd, be asked to do um a specialty act in a show doing belly dance, which is not something that I've done very often, but I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess I'll give it a go." I just tried to be really, really flexible because, there's not that there's limited opportunity, especially in a small town.
But I
But
think
rejection was hard. I remember crying myself to sleep a couple nights that I did not get the spot I wanted or something like that, because I was very attached emotionally to the outcome of some of these things. Um, but you just pick yourself up and usually a better door opens, and I know that's like hard to tell yourself when you're like in the midst of um just having a traumatic experience over it. But at the end of the day, looking back at the like zooming out of those scenarios, I really did realize that, like, oh, because that didn't happen, I actually got to go to Atlantic City for 3 months and like have a way cooler experience, or, things like
I
that.
I love oh man, I love that mentality. I wish I had that's incredible. I mean, I never really looked at it that way, that a better opportunity is just going to come along. And yeah, it might not be exactly what you envisioned, but I mean, who knows? It could be something wonderful. And I think that's what kind of has led you on such a cool and unique path creatively. You were really open to that. You weren't like, it can only happen this way, it can only work this way. You're like, okay, if this doesn't work out, something else will. And I love that you just like took all those like odd jobs, like you like
Some of them
country
were
dancing. I
the
love
amount of random jobs I've taken, I cannot. I
I
mean,
love it so much.
that'd be a whole other segment.
But what a cool life though, you've done so much, you've experienced life in so many different ways, so many different forms of dance.
It
For
was
me, it wasn't until like I moved to Colorado that I actually really started loving dance again. And it's when I stopped caring. It's like I'm doing this for me, I'm doing it for fun. And I actually became a better dancer that way, which is crazy.
that's
I was like,
huge.
I wish young Leela knew that the key to it really was, yeah, just passion, enjoying it, and being open to like seeing where it goes. And I'm wondering if like that community that you had, at least for like the jobs you had in Reno, is that kind of like what helped boost you on your trajectory, even from like dancing and being a professional dancer to teaching and then creating your dance show?
Yeah, I think it absolutely did because once you kind of got in with those production companies, it made it a lot easier to just get rebooked and not have to re-audition for things. And that really built up your confidence. And I think that Reno just I happened to catch this like perfect window of timing where shows were still a thing. They were very much alive in the casinos, and we were kind of coming out of that era of like old Hollywood and Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra, and then the big Hello Hollywood Hello show that brought all these people to Reno, and then those people opened up dance studios and had families, and it's just like Reno does have this whole other history and world around that. And then I just kind of caught like the last 10 years of it. So I was
Actually,
able to like actually get plugged in and work in that sort of environment before it like officially was like dead in Reno.
I okay, so I didn't know it died. Um, because that's what I loved about Reno for us. Like we had that opportunity to dance on big stages. I didn't know that that's over. Or is it
Yeah.
not?
So I would say maybe like 6 years ago, it really took a hit. It was pre-COVID even, we were seeing it start to fade out. Like people just weren't going to see live shows at the casinos as much anymore. The casinos stopped fronting and paying for the shows up front. So a lot of these producers in town had to call it four wall, where they basically took on all of the risk with the promotions and paying their cast and ticket sales and renting the theater and all of that. So it became really high risk for producers, and people were going to them less, and they weren't being backed by the casinos as much. So they just started to slowly fade out. And I saw the jobs just start to get like less and less and less until it reached a point where I was like, I don't know how many of these are going to be around anymore. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to transition like physically from dance into singing. And, I that was a part of my childhood as well. But I started focusing on my singing, and I kind of just like went from doing dance shows to singing with musicians in town at brunch spots, and then eventually auditioning for bands and doing tribute bands. And so now I do way more singing than I do dancing, but I do still teach dance and choreograph for these shows. So I found that that was the best way for me to keep doing what I was doing in the performing world, because I had to adapt to the changing times.
I mean, you have a awesome, I haven't seen it yet, but an awesome burlesque show, which is incredible. I mean, how did you go, yeah, from being a dancer and teaching then to creating a show and choreographing and putting that together, in light of kind of seeing what was going on in Reno at the time?
I think I saw where things were going. It was making me sad that shows were becoming a dying art, and I knew that there was still like a demand for shows on some level, but like more of an underground thing where maybe not in the casinos, but at smaller venues or little pop-ups. And during COVID, when everything got shut down, that's when I started to really consider maybe putting on my own production, because I was like, nobody's doing it anymore. I really wanted to revive that. And so thankfully, because I had been in over a dozen production shows, some all over the world, I felt like I had a really good basis of where I could start with, just kind of step one, what music am I inspired by? What themes or, show themes am I inspired by? Step two, like who's even available in the area that would want to dance and perform in these shows, finding a venue. And I felt like it just sort of naturally put all of my gifts and talents and niches into this perfect little box for me, because I got to put on all these different hats of things that I've enjoyed doing over the years, and I got to combine them in a way that felt really good to me. It felt like I was like truly like excited and lit up by this project, and it made me feel like I was really on the right path, and it got a great response, and we sold it out like 13 shows the first year, at a very small venue. It was like, a little over 50 people could fit in this space, which is what we were looking at for, COVID. But then just building off that and the experience of that, and then next year going a little bit bigger, renting a bigger theater, selling that out again. And then now I'm going into my fourth year of producing these little mini runs of shows in Reno, and it really feels like a good use of my time and skill set, and something that the community actually really wanted, just in a different way than was being presented in the casinos.
That's awesome that you could kind of, yeah, foresee that. Like, how do I keep this spirit alive in Reno and still bring, the shows to the people? And I mean, it has to be at a smaller scale. Like, did you do this all on your own?
It really helped me to stay in Reno in some ways, and it wasn't like just playing small, but it was these connections and relationships I had built that really like ended up serving me in all these different facets later on of people I knew in the dance community. And I think the first show I really did tackle on too much on my personal plate, and I didn't really delegate enough to my team and my cast. And I learned a lot from that experience. And each time I've done a show, I have asked for more and more help from the people that I'm working with, because I think it is a lot to take on your own, especially if you're like working other little part time jobs and it's not like the full focus. There's so much to take into account. And
Because you
that's
were
another
teaching at
thing.
the time, right? You were teaching too.
Yeah. And I was managing a bar at the time.
Oh my God, Marla.
Yeah, I ended up using the bar venue that I was working at to put together this show. And that's another thing. It's like,
Resourceful.
find that when it's like a full yes and my intuition's like lit up and I'm like pulled to do a project, I know it's going to be like a tremendous amount of work and I'm going to be super tired and burnt out. But I also know that like that kind of energy is going to keep me going and all the way through. And even though it's going to be hard, like it will be fulfilling at the same time. Whereas I don't think if you have that, if you don't have that level of excitement and like full yes and opening to a big project like that, you probably won't have the energy to see it through all the way. And when I get done with these, I take extended periods of time where I'm just resting because I feel so um like my nervous system took on like way more than I'm used to for that stint of time. So, yeah, just balancing out after all of it and taking all of that into consideration when starting a project.
When you're really passionate about something and you believe so strongly in it, you can pour more work, more effort into it because you love it. You're embodied in it. And yeah, I think that's a huge piece of it, um, is pursuing and doing something you really believe in, you really love, you really feel like you are serving your community and doing something for the world you believe in. I think that's a huge driver and can, you know, make it worth all the effort, the long hours. And, that's something I'm starting to learn right now is like pushing through my fears of, my doubts, my fears of failure, of not being able to bring something to life and instead being led by my passion. Like, this is something you could give to the world. This is something you love. Why wouldn't you do it? Why would you hold back just because, you might fail, or just because it might be hard, or, just because it might test you physically, mentally, emotionally? I commend you for, just knowing that and going for it and knowing that this is your mission. This is what you want to do. And I mean, I'm sure Reno is so much better for it too, that, you're part of, the group of people keeping the arts alive, keeping that world and community strong.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because sometimes I even lose sight of it, and I think that's, the why behind what you're doing is so important because there will be nights where you're just like, "Why am I doing this? This is awful. Like, I'm so stressed out, I'm tired, there's drama, whatever, conflict is happening." So just touching in with, like, the essence of why you started is really important, I think, with anything you do, because anything you do is gonna require um, a tremendous amount of attention and energy and effort. And so you might as well connect to a project that you're fully invested in. Um, and, when people come up to me after the shows and they're like, wow, that show should have been in Vegas, or that's like something that I would see in a big city. Like those kind of comments really make me feel like everything's worthwhile because I am trying to bring like an elevated art scene to Reno. And community is a really important part of why I think I've stayed in Reno. Even though I have traveled a lot, it like always kind of pulls me back in because I have such an amazing base of friends and family here. And I really do think that it adds value to our town. And that's why I continue to want to do it.
I'm just also like trying to like piece together then like how that leads,
I know.
to your next or your newest endeavor, which is Soltara,
Mhm.
which is so different in a way. I mean, I mean, it's an elixir bar, but in a way, it's the same. It's the same why. It's the same passion of community.
It is.
Bringing people together. So it does make sense, but it is kind of, I'm sure, another learning curve about going from creating, a dance production to a an elixir bar. So I'm like curious how that came about.
Yeah, slash embodiment art center.
Oh, that's
So we
right, right, yeah.
classes like, dance and yoga and stuff too,
Yeah.
sound healings, meditation. I would say if I had to categorize like the 2 things I'm most passionate about, it would be, performing arts and health and wellness. And I feel like because of the people I know in the health and wellness world here in Reno, that it was like this little bridge, kinda connecting the 2 and, like, creating this other little pocket of community. We structured it as a nonprofit for those reasons, and I've had a ton of help on this because there's actually 6 core founders that helped create the nonprofit. So I feel like extra supported in that endeavor because I've had so much help from everyone in our core group to get it going. But I would say it does intersect those same values of community, expression.
Yeah. That's the beauty of community and connection and collaboration. I think what we can do combined with other, working with other people is so much greater than what we can do alone.
From doing my first show, like kind of all on my own, to now collaborating with like 6 people with very unique backgrounds and skill sets to bring to the table. I do see the benefit in just like problem solving and ideas that are created like in a group dynamic when you have meetings. And I really love that energy of co-creating with other people towards like a collective vision. I think that's ultimately where I'm headed. I want to do more and more of that rather than take it on all by myself. And that's probably why this this opportunity came into my life. It's exciting, when you're starting to sprout things for the first time, and it's like sky's the limit. And our mission is basically to create a space where people feel safe to come and connect with other people, like minded people over personal development, health and wellness, movement arts, and, have a healthy elixir, um, you know, having an option for people that don't drink alcohol to come too. And we've been getting a lot of feedback from people saying, "Oh, I'm so glad Reno has a place like this and it was so needed." We're just starting to build our programming and like offering different things on our schedule. But I think the long term vision, just keep the programming consistent, build up the classes. And then, if it does well, maybe we can have Soltaras in different cities or even different countries.
Yes. That would be amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, especially with you, Marla, the sky's the limit. And I feel like not just Reno, but every city needs that. I mean, I feel a lack of community in Boulder. Like there's just so many bars. You just go to a bar and either you just hang out with who you're there with. I mean, maybe you might meet someone new, but not in the fashion of just bringing people together, just like intentionally there to connect with new people and mingle um and I think like you guys like incorporating the program and the events and the classes, like that's so smart because just making it alone as an elixir bar might be a little more challenging.
We're really just starting. I mean, we just kind of had our grand opening last month, so I'm excited to see where it's going to go, and yeah, very proud to be involved in it.
Yeah. Aw. Well, I know my mom had a great time there. She loved it. And I loved, I mean, I
Thanks.
wasn't there for the opening, but I loved the drinks. I thought they were delicious. And like the vibe, the vibe of it is just awesome. So yeah.
And it's funny because I don't even know how long ago this was, but I used to help manage a tea lounge at another yoga studio in town many, many years ago. And I was the tea tender there for like 5 years before I even got into bar management. And that door sort of closed for me, which was one of those closing door moments where I was sad about it because I really did meet some incredible people and lifelong friends through doing that. Um, but it also freed up space in my life where I went and auditioned for this 80s tribute band and I started performing with them every weekend. But it's just so funny to see like full circle how that was like an important part of my life for about 5 years, being a part of this little tea lounge elixir bar. And then now we're like recreating it in this different timeline for, you know, older people that still want to go out and connect over a beverage and meet new people, and it feels really good.
I love that. I mean, it's cool how different pieces of your life, come full circle and everything you've done and everything you've
Yeah,
learned has helped something in the future. So it's like never anything was like wasted time.
totally.
And I
Some of
think
these
it's
things
no,
are so random, but, like,
yeah.
they really do intersect in this really interesting synchronistic way.
And I think they do and can for everyone. I just think we don't always see that. And I mean, I'm so happy to be talking to you about this today because it's neat to talk to someone who really was open enough to, and creative enough to do that, to be able to like pick that and piece it together for each thing that you're doing. Because sometimes I would think, my um, parts of my career or life for a waste of time. Not a waste of time, but like my PhD, for instance, since I'm exploring a different path now, I'm like, well, how is that going to help me anymore? But there's there's so many ways that it can and will. I just have to like be open to that and
It doesn't
applying
just
it.
go away. I mean, I've always looked up to how you've just continued to pursue your education in this, like, amazing way and just, like, really went all the way in that field, and that's such a hard thing as a woman to do, and I was just so impressed. It takes it takes a lot to commit to those kind of programs, and it's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of stress, and it's not for everyone. Not everyone can do that. I mean, not everyone can handle that kind of stress, and I think for me, I just knew that the corporate world wasn't for me right away, and, I didn't have to, like, awkwardly navigate out of it or something. It just, like, it was never even an option to begin with for me. but I really tremendously look up to the discipline it requires to take on those kind of life paths.
Yeah. And but at the same, I mean, it's the same thing though in a way. I mean, I don't think I worked any harder, was more disciplined than you. I like it comes down to what we were saying, passion. I
Mhm.
was very passionate about science, and I still am. And ultimately, I think what like contributed to me leaving is I felt like I was no longer able to bring that creativity and imagination into my work. And that's when I felt I can't keep doing all this hard stuff when I don't feel lit up anymore. There wasn't a lot of room in my job for that creativity and really, when I was a grad student, I was able to be creative, test stuff out, try out my ideas. But, then I took a job as an engineer and it was like, I have to, get this done for this space mission. And it needs, it's going to launch in, this many years. There's no playing around with ideas. And, I kind of lost that spark. And so right now and who knows, maybe in the future it will involve science, but I'm being drawn to that creativity, that desire to create, to serve, to, you know, get get in touch again with my artistic side because I I lost that along the way. And I mean, I'm like re-inspired talking to you because I mean, you've always adapted and followed the path that really lit you up the most. And I think that's the key.
Our culture, really makes us connect into our logical brain a lot, and we're kind of losing that like intuitive connection to our hearts, where it's just being muffled a little bit. And I've always tried to make decisions from that space as much as I can, but you can never get off course because I feel like when you suppress things or you're feeling unfulfilled, you will just be gently guided back into alignment to express those things through, coaching and speaking or however you're feeling desire to express them. And, the universe has a way of just letting you know when you're out of balance and course correcting you back into the things that you enjoy and make life worth living.
I love that. Yeah. Um, life will always, yeah, or what did you say? You'll never go off course. I love that so much. And it's so true. And I think we have to remind ourselves that even if life doesn't seem to be going in the direction we thought it would or should, it's
Mhm.
leading you, yeah, in your aligned direction. And you kind of just have to go with it and trust it. You still have to make moves, but I think when you go into it not really, having a plan, but not knowing where it'll take you and kind of going with wherever it does, like you with like taking the dance gigs that maybe weren't exactly what you initially wanted, or, you know, getting into smaller scale production with the burlesque show. And I mean, it's you really, yeah, you seized those opportunities and saw, that I'm not going to overthink it. This is presenting itself to me for a reason, and I'm just going to let myself go for the ride.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's just baby steps, Take
Mm-hmm.
on as much risk as you feel comfortable with, and then start somewhere and just kind of build from there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Marla, I enjoyed this conversation so much.
Thank you.
I mean, you're such a dear friend to me. I think you're such a beautiful human, and um, I agree with what you're saying with the play as well. I think life needs more play, more fun. And that's something that I'm a stand for and something I'm actually what I'm kind of being drawn into right now as well. Um, but yeah, I'm grateful for our friendship and this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
I'm absolutely honored to be invited on as your first guest, and this conversation was So perfect. I think I got so much out of it too. And it's always lovely connecting with you. I don't get to touch in enough. And thank you so much.